Chapter 1096, The Use of the Blood God Crystal. Zhao Feng now had 3 fruits. Their colors were respectively yellow, blue, and gold. Putting aside Zhao Feng or any other early-stage sacred lord, the intent contained within these fruits was extremely attractive to even demigods. These fruits also contained a source of pure divine power that exceeded the divine power that demigods controlled. One could tell how rare these fruits were from how intense the fight between demigod Weathered Breath and demigod Arcane Void was. It was because of all that Zhao Feng was unable to absorb these fruits at his current stage. Normal sacred lords that weren't careful had lost their consciousness just from standing too close to the vines. If Zhao Feng dared to rashly eat a fruit, it was the same as suicide. Zhao Feng handed over the 3 fruits to the little thieving cat and had it pierce a small hole in the surface of the crystal. Shoo! A blood-colored crystal pearl appeared in Zhao Feng's hand. This was the blood god crystal. If it wasn't for the divine power within this blood god crystal, Zhao Feng wouldn't have been able to block demigod Ferocity's attack earlier. Zhao Feng already had another god crystal in his little world of illusions, but if even the blood god crystal, which contained the bloodline of the god corpse, wasn't able to block demigod Ferocity's attack, then the divine power of normal god crystals would probably be even worse. Although god crystals were formed from the power of a true god, they weren't purely divine power, they also contained a large amount of heaven-earth essence. In addition, Zhao Feng could only circulate the divine power externally. He couldn't actually use it himself and unleash its true power. Nan Gongshen could use divine power because of the evil god mental thought body's guidance and help, whereas Kunyuan could do so because he already had demigod intent and the memories of his previous life. Zhao Feng sighed. He originally planned to absorb the divine power within the blood god crystal and use it himself, but from the looks of it, using divine power wasn't as easy as he thought. Furthermore, this blood god crystal contained bloodline power as well, and the value of this bloodline power wasn't any lower than divine power. Maybe I can use the blood god crystal this way? Zhao Feng's eyes suddenly twinkled as he thought of a good idea. I can use the bloodline power within the blood god crystal to create a second clone. Zhao Feng said with joy and surprise. The body of his first clone was formed from the spiritual flesh snow jade lotus root, so it was relatively low level. This was why Zhao Wang needed so much time to cultivate. The spiritual flesh snow jade lotuses weren't as valuable anymore due to Zhao Feng's current level. Now that the second level of the soul-splitting technique was complete and he had basically obtained the eyes of myriad forms, all he needed to consider for his second soul clone was the body. Zhao Feng waved his hand, and a large amount of blood-colored liquid appeared before Zhao Feng from the misty spatial world. The blood-colored liquid also contained a blood crystal Yao spirit that hadn't fully grown yet. According to Zhao Feng's senses, this blood crystal Yao spirit already had the power of a king. If I merge this incomplete blood crystal Yao spirit with this blood-colored liquid and use the blood god crystal as the source of energy, maybe I'll be able to create a powerful and unique body. Zhao Feng was extremely excited, and his heart started to shake. This blood-colored liquid, the blood crystal Yao spirit, and the blood god crystal all contained a wisp of the god corpse's bloodline power. If raised well, Zhao Feng could even create a body that contained the bloodline of the giant god race. One had to know that the giant god race was ranked 15th among the 10,000 ancient races, a terrifying race that was ranked even higher than the spiritual race. Zhao Wang's body was many, many times weaker. Of course, this was just Zhao Feng's idea. He didn't know whether it could actually succeed or not. I need to gather some resources and confirm whether or not this can be done. Zhao Feng started to think. He hadn't comprehended any proper clone secret techniques, so had very little experience in the aspect of creating such a high-level clone. Thus, he had to leave it for now. Zhao Feng then started to consolidate and increase his cultivation. Shoo! Shoo! Several precious resources that he had obtained in the god corpse appeared in Zhao Feng's hand. Apart from the effect of the herbs themselves, they all contained a strong source of yuan qi and aura of the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng used the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and started to comprehend the 5 elemental wind lightning technique and golden kun sacred lightning body at the same time. The energy contained within the herbs was very useful to Zhao Feng's body and his perfect blood devil sun bloodline. My Earth of Wind Lightning will soon be able to reach the late stages, and my Golden Kun Sacred Lightning body is about to be consolidated at the early stage 6th level. Zhao Feng was happy. He had fought against the top experts of both Lord dynasties ever since entering the God Corps, and he had eaten many precious resources from the God Corps. This allowed Zhao Feng to completely consolidate his foundation and strengthen it as well. Zhao Feng had also absorbed a large amount of intent from the giant red crystal vines. The battle with demigod ferocity also allowed Zhao Feng to completely comprehend the intent of heaven and earth. The power of his soul intent had also been refined and purified. However, the fight with demigod ferocity was too short and dangerous, so Zhao Feng didn't dare to use the intent of a demigod to train himself. Thus, he just copied the scenery of the fight against demigod ferocity into his left eye. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's last thought entered into the dimension of his left eye. There were a few resources that Zhao Feng was duplicating within the dimension of his left eye apart from the head of the demigod. The imagery within the dimension of his god eye suddenly turned into the scenery of him and his friends fighting demigod ferocity. The scenery within his left eye was extremely realistic, and it would only become stronger as Zhao Feng's eye intent became stronger. Even Zhao Feng, who had a clear mind and powerful intent, felt that everything around him was real. It was as if he had returned to the time when he was fighting demigod ferocity. However, there was no sense of urgency or danger this time. Zhao Feng was able to calmly analyze demigod ferocity's skills and usage of power very well. Demigods have perfect control over their power. They can use the power of the outside world and merge it into their own attacks. Zhao Feng kept on replaying the scenery of every clash with demigod ferocity and inspected the power that demigod ferocity summoned with every action. This was the same as a demigod personally performing and teaching Zhao Feng how they used their soul intent and power. Zhao Feng's knowledge and skill started to rapidly rise. A day later, within the misty spatial world. Wang tilde. The earth of wind lightning that was surrounding Zhao Feng suddenly released a snow-white light that radiated an invisible force field. My earth of wind lightning has finally reached the late stages. Zhao Feng's consciousness left the dimension of his left eye and returned to his body. My sacred lightning body has also consolidated, so I can try to break through to the next stage at any moment now. Zhao Feng felt the changes within his body and used the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. His main focus was in the dimension of his god eye to learn from demigod ferocity. Therefore, Zhao Feng's main improvements were in actual combat and intent. With my current strength, I will be able to fight against normal sacred kings even without using the tribulation lightning eye flames. Zhao Feng was full of smiles. What he obtained in the God Corps was already very shocking. Although the journey was full of dangers, if Zhao Feng had stayed in the Hall of Gods and just entered seclusion, it would have been impossible to make such drastic improvements even if he had the duplication ability of his left eye that could create infinite resources. However, time was tight right now, so even though Zhao Feng had a bunch of resources, he didn't have any time to enter comprehension. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's figure appeared in the outside world. Zhao Yufei was covered by a layer of power from her little world, but Zhao Feng could still feel the surge of powerful mystic light sacred power from it. Wang tilde hu. The purple flames around Zhao Yufei spread, and she seemed to become a perfect icy jade goddess from a divine realm. Brother Feng. Zhao Yufei had a smile on her face. You've reached the late stages of the mystic light realm. Zhao Feng was able to see Zhao Yufei's current cultivation with one glance, and Zhao Yufei nodded her head with a smile. Zhao Feng took in a cold breath. The spiritual race bloodline was indeed worthy of being ranked 19th among the 10,000 ancient races. Even Zhao Feng didn't have such fast cultivation speed. On the other hand, Kun Yun only recently became a sacred king, but he was also able to familiarize himself with the power in his body and obtain some strong secret techniques. As for Nan Gongsheng, he had completely consolidated his strength at the late stages of the mystic light realm, and he radiated a terrifying wicked power that made one's heart tremble. Zhao Feng, thanks to you, my strength has increased. Sacred King Darkscreen said with a smile. Sacred King Darkscreen had obviously obtained a lot from the battle against demigod ferocity, and it would be of great help to him when he tried to break through to the heavenly divine realm. If it wasn't for Zhao Feng, Sacred King Darkscreen wouldn't have dared to fight against demigod ferocity head-on. Then let's get ready to go. There might be nothing left if we arrive late. Zhao Feng said with a smile, and everyone ended their cultivation session and headed in the direction of the head. They could feel the aura of divine power from the crystal walls becoming stronger the closer they got. They also met more and more groups on the way, including non-humans. However, If the difference in strength between two groups wasn't very obvious, the two lower dynasties wouldn't attack each other easily. After all, obtaining the fortune within the God Corpse was the most important thing right now. The path that the group was walking through started to expand, and it turned into an endless pathway. All the other groups that were heading toward the head of the God Corpse started to gather in this wide path. "We're here." A wicked light flashed through Nan Gongsheng's eyes, and everyone started to slow down. At the end of this endless crystal pathway was a broad dimension containing ruined crystals. All the experts of both Lord dynasties were present, scattered around the crystal ruins. Chapter 1097, Resolving Method. Within a cave on the right side of the crystal dimension, the expressions of Sacred King Feather Spirit, Sacred King Green Light, and Sacred King Shai shook as they looked at the people that just appeared at the entrance of the giant pathway in disbelief. Zhao Feng? Nan Gongsheng, Zhao Yufei, and Kunyun as well. Sacred King Green Light was stunned. How is it possible for them to make it here? Sacred King Feather Spirit was dazed, and explosions went off in his mind. A non-human demigod was chasing after Zhao Feng and company, so how was it possible for them to appear here? What is it? An old voice sounded from within the depths of the cave. Reporting to Grand Elder Tai Chi, this junior saw that Zhao Feng and company were being chased by a non-human demigod early and is simply surprised by the fact that Zhao Feng is here. Sacred King Feather Spirit immediately replied. Demigod Tai Chi knew Sacred King Feather Spirit's ancestor. If it wasn't for the fact that Demigod Tai Chi had supported Sacred King Feather Spirit so many times, the latter would never reached his current stage. Sacred King Feather Spirit didn't dare to mention the feud between himself and Zhao Feng because all of that was nothing in the eyes of a demigod. However, right after Sacred King Feather Spirit spoke, the expressions of all the Grand Imperial Hall members within the crystal cave changed as they scanned out with their divine sense. That's Sacred King Darkscreen and Kunyun. A Sacred King from the Grand Imperial Hall spoke, and everyone else from the Grand Imperial Hall instantly understood why Zhao Feng and company were able to escape from a demigod. It was definitely because they had the help of Kunyun and the group from Black Screen Corner. In addition, at this time, Kunyun's and Sacred King Darkscreen Sora's were stronger than before. Zhao Feng obviously noticed the Grand Imperial Hall and the broad pathway. The Grand Imperial Hall shouldn't attack us. Zhao Feng sensed that something was different. Zhao Feng dared to do anything and everything as long as he didn't do anything to the demigods of the Grand Imperial Hall. The Grand Imperial Hall was the ruler of the Great Gon Lord dynasty, their every action would attract the nearby human forces and groups. Divine senses one after another swept out through the caves and ruins nearby. Of course, most of them focused on the members of Black Screen Corner and Kunyun. Black Screen Corner was a neutral force, so a lot of forces and groups of the Great Gon Lord dynasty wanted to team up with them. As for Kunyun, he was a revived demigod. News of this had already spread across both Lord dynasties long ago, so a lot of forces wanted to join Kunyun as well. In a certain ruin, Demigod Dark Ocean and Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss from Nine Darkness Palace looked at Zhao Feng. How is this possible? Sacred King Earth Ghost exclaimed. Demigod Dark Ocean's eyes twinkled slightly and he was about to speak. Boom. A powerful intent shook heaven and earth as it suddenly spread through the broad pathway. The groups of both Lord dynasties stood still and were unable to move as they looked at the divine figure floating in the sky. Demigod ferocity? A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face. Old undead, you were actually right behind us? Kunyun laughed. Sacred King Darkscreen shook his head and led the members of Black Screen Corner to enter the broad dimension ahead. Die. Demigod Ferocity was enraged, and his hair blew in the wind as he turned into a dark yellow beam of light and charged toward Zhao Feng and company. Zhao Feng, Nan Gongsheng, and company immediately headed into the dimension in front of them and toward the right. Demigod Ferocity charged into the dimension, instantly arrived before Zhao Feng, and got ready to attack. Fuck off. A roar sounded from within the cave where the Grand Imperial Hall was located. The entire dimension quieted down as a tense aura spread. It made the hearts of normal sacred lords tighten, and they didn't even dare to breathe. At the same time, a heavy intent swept toward Demigod Ferocity. Who? The roar entered Demigod Ferocity's soul and pushed back his grand intent. Surges of powerful auras appeared one after another from the right side of the dimension. Demigod Ferocity's heart shook, and he finally retracted all his power. Come here. A cold voice sounded from a cave on the left side of the dimension. Demigod ferocity immediately turned toward it. It was the territory of the Dark Moon Lord dynasty. Zhao Feng and company smiled and continued to progress forward. The reason they dared to act so nonchalantly was because they were certain that demigod ferocity couldn't kill them here. The two Lord dynasties each took up one side of the broad dimension. If demigod ferocity entered the territory of the Great Gon Lord dynasty and killed Zhao Feng and company, where would the Grand Imperial Hall's face go? How would they be able to rule over the Lord dynasty? However, this also meant that the forces of both Lord dynasties were attracted to Zhao Feng's group and Sacred King Darkscreen's group. What happened between them and demigod ferocity for a non-human demigod to hate them so much? A strong human elder from a 3-star power was puzzled. Zhao Feng and company found a random corner and stopped while Sacred King Darkscreen's group left Zhao Feng's group and headed toward the inner regions. The two sides had already discussed this when they started heading toward the God Corpse's head. Zhao Feng said that he wouldn't team up with any other force, which meant that Sacred King Darkscreen's and Zhao Feng's cooperation came to an end. Zhao Feng, Kunyun, and company gathered together, then set down a barrier around them. However, before they could start speaking, an unwelcome visitor appeared outside the barrier. Zhao Feng, the Grand Elder of Nine Darkness Palace invites you over. Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss gave Zhao Feng a complicated look. Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss was the one that had once attacked the Hall of Gods directly. He believed that he would be able to take revenge the next time he saw Zhao Feng, but at this moment, he was slightly scared of Zhao Feng. Nine Darkness Palace. Zhao Feng's heart dropped. He didn't think that the Grand Elder of Nine Darkness Palace would be so direct and try to take action the moment he saw him. If Zhao Feng entered the territory of Nine Darkness Palace and got killed by demigod Dark Ocean, the latter could find any random reason to cover it up. It was almost impossible for a non-human demigod to kill a human right now, but it was extremely simple for a human demigod to kill a human sacred lord. Right as Zhao Feng was thinking about how to resolve this, a bright and old voice sounded from a certain cave. The Grand Elder of the Tai family would like to meet little friend Zhao. A red-haired elder with white robes in the cave revealed a warm smile. The Tai family. Zhao Feng's expression paused as he looked toward the source of the voice. When he interacted with the Tai family last time, they sent Tai Hongling with him and tried to make them a couple, but Zhao Feng hadn't done anything and just left by himself. Zhao Feng originally thought that the Tai family would be angry at that, or at least not be quite as happy as they were right now. The Tai family's interference at this moment surprised Zhao Feng. The one that spoke was Tai Hongling's grandfather, the Grand Elder of the Tai family, Sacred King Scarlet Sun. Demigod Dark Ocean's expression became ugly over in Nine Darkness Palace's territory. Come back. Demigod Dark Ocean messaged Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss. Since the Tai family had already said something, even if he tried to forcefully invite Zhao Feng over, they couldn't do anything to Zhao Feng. Although Nine Darkness Palace and the Tai family were both peak 3-star forces, the Tai family's relationship with the Grand Imperial Hall was obviously better. Little friend Zhao can go to the Tai family then. Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss put on a good performance on the surface and left. All the experts and forces of both Lord dynasties once again turned their attention to Zhao Feng. A non-human demigod wanted to kill this normal Sacred Lord, and now he was causing a fight between two of the top forces in the Great Gon Lord dynasty. Who was he? Of course, almost all of the forces of the Great Gon Lord dynasty already knew of Zhao Feng and about the relationship between Zhao Feng, Nine Darkness Palace, and the Tai family. Zhao Feng left the barrier and flew toward the territory of the Tai family. Although Zhao Feng didn't really like the Tai family, the demigod of the Tai family was definitely present. Besides, the Tai family helped Zhao Feng this time. Zhao Feng had to give them face at least. Wang tilde. A hole opened in the barrier of the Tai family's cave, which Zhao Feng then entered through. Many sacred lords and sacred kings of the Tai family looked at Zhao Feng with fiery eyes. Thank you for helping me, Senior Scarlet Sun. Zhao Feng put his hands together and thanked him. Little friend Zhao, make yourself at home. Come on in. Tai Hongling's grandfather, Sacred King Scarlet Sun, personally invited Zhao Feng inside. An elder covered in red light sat in the middle of the cave. The area around him was a forbidden area. Demigod Scarlet Blood of the Tai family. Zhao Feng's heart jumped. However, this demigod from the Tai family had his eyes closed and was completely ignoring what was happening outside. Little friend Zhao Feng, I didn't think that you already had someone in mind. Sacred King Scarlet Sun laughed, and Zhao Feng had a slightly awkward expression. He obviously knew that Sacred King Scarlet Sun was talking about Zhao Yufei. Back then, I was thinking of making you become a couple with my granddaughter, but from the looks of it, my granddaughter isn't lucky enough. Sacred King Scarlet Sun continued. In comparison to Zhao Yufei, the number one beauty of the Tai family was indeed a lot lower. No, Lady Hongling is very charming. Zhao Feng replied respectfully to Sacred King Scarlet Sun. Zhao Feng had a very good impression of Sacred King Scarlet Sun. He was a sacred king but didn't act arrogant at all and was easy to talk to. Sacred King Scarlet Sun then went to the main topic. Can little friend Zhao really not fulfill my wishes and let the perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline return to the Tai family? Sacred King Scarlet Sun sighed. Zhao Feng's expression was grim. He had thought of this question many times. Once he joined the Tai family, he would be protected by them, and Nine Darkness Palace wouldn't cause any trouble. However, Zhao Feng still decided to not join the Tai family. While Nine Darkness Palace might not cause trouble for Zhao Feng wanted to cause trouble for Nine Darkness Palace. Zhao Feng had thought of a plan to resolve this issue, but there were many uncontrollable variables. This junior is obviously willing to fulfill Senior Scarlet Sun's wishes, Zhao Feng said. Who? A wave of hot air blasted across the entire cave as the expressions of all the experts turned to surprise. Even the eyebrows of Demigod Scarlet Blood twitched slightly. Little friend Zhao is willing to join? Sacred King Scarlet Sun was very excited. He didn't expect Zhao Feng's reply to be so decisive, and from the looks of it, Zhao Feng wasn't joking. This junior indeed has a couple methods. If Senior doesn't mind, you can send a few disciples to the Hall of Gods, and I will help them awaken the perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline. However, I can't guarantee if it will work or not. Zhao Feng stopped Sacred King Scarlet Sun and told him the plan that he had thought of a long time ago. Chapter 1098, Appearance of Samsara. This junior indeed has a couple methods. If Senior doesn't mind, you can send a few disciples to the Hall of Gods, and I will help them awaken the perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline. However, I can't guarantee if it will work or not. Zhao Feng stopped Sacred King Scarlet Sun and told him the plan that he had thought of a long time ago. Methods. The members of the Tai family murmured in surprise. Zhao Feng's current perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline had already surpassed the perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline that had once appeared in the Tai family in the past. Therefore, the upper echelon of the Tai family guessed that Zhao Feng might have some sort of method to improve his bloodline. Now that Zhao Feng said it, their guesses were confirmed. At the same time, some of the elders of the Tai family became greedy. If they were to obtain this method, the Tai family might be able to raise a bunch of disciples with perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodlines. The upper echelon of the Tai family started to communicate with each other. There were two attitudes toward Zhao Feng. The first was to agree with Zhao Feng. This would also mean that they would form a good relationship with the Hall of Gods. All the forces in the Great Gon Lord dynasty had witnessed the expansion of the Hall of Gods, and they knew it would soon become one of the biggest forces in the Lord dynasty. The second was to capture Zhao Feng and obtain his method. As long as Demigod Scarlet Blood took action, it should be extremely easy to capture Zhao Feng. Once the Tai family could continuously raise people with perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodlines, the Tai family would soon become the strongest 3-star power in the Lord dynasty, and would even have hope of becoming a 4-star power. However, Sacred King Scarlet Sun suddenly spoke at this moment. If that's the case, then I'll be thanking little friend Zhao right here. Sacred King Scarlet Sun revealed a faint smile. He had originally just wanted Zhao Feng to have a few children with some females of the Tai family. It was very likely that his offspring would contain the perfect bloodline Devil Sun bloodline. However, now that Zhao Feng admitted that he had unique methods and was willing to help the members of the Tai family awaken perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodlines of their own, it was better than the idea that the upper echelon of the Tai family had before. While they could obtain the unique method from Zhao Feng, Sacred King Scarlet Sun didn't do this in the end. Firstly, he didn't believe that there was a method out there that could limitlessly awaken such a powerful bloodline. Secondly, Zhao Feng's growth shocked him. When they met for the first time, Zhao Feng was just an emperor, but now he was an early-stage sacred lord. With Zhao Feng's potential and talent, it wasn't impossible for him to become a god. Thirdly, Sacred King Scarlet Sun was surprised by how Zhao Feng spoke without fear. Why was he so confident that the Tai family wouldn't do anything to him? Fourthly, this was what demigod Scarlet Blood thought as well. The other experts of the Tai family stopped thinking about capturing Zhao Feng when Sacred King Scarlet Sun spoke, because he had definitely discussed things with demigod Scarlet Blood in order to come to this conclusion. But I can only do it after I return to the Hall of Gods. Zhao Feng revealed a cunning smile. What he meant by this was extremely obvious: the Tai family had to protect him here. If he had an accident, then he obviously wouldn't be able to deliver on his promise. Of course, Sacred King Scarlet Sun knew what Zhao Feng meant. With the protection of the Tai family, Nine Darkness Palace wouldn't dare to do anything to Zhao Feng, at least on the surface. Besides, Zhao Feng was still with Kun Yuan, and he had the misty spatial world. As long as they didn't purposefully find trouble, there shouldn't be any problem. Then this junior will be leaving now. Zhao Feng bowed faintly and left the cave. At this moment, demigod Scarlet Blood's voice sounded. I will be trying to become a god after leaving the God Corps. I might succeed or I might fail, so don't form a bad relationship with anyone else. The upper echelon of the Tai family became silent. Failing to break through to the heavenly divine realm might result in death. This meant that the Tai family might not have a demigod expert in the future, and since the Hall of Gods had a lot of potential, it was best for the Tai family to form a good relationship with him, or at least not offend them. Zhao Feng left the Tai family's cave safely. Zhao Yufei revealed a joyful look in a certain corner. Brother Feng, did the Tai family do anything to you? Zhao Yufei asked. They won't do anything to me. Zhao Feng replied confidently. Now that Zhao Feng had the protection of the Tai family, he didn't need to worry too much about the demigod of Nine Darkness Palace. This meant that he could use the last god-slaying arrow to deal with other dangers. Zhao Feng then turned his gaze toward the front. At the very end was a giant white and gold screen. This screen was formed from pure divine power. The terrifying aura of divine power radiating from it stopped everyone from getting too close. Even the divine senses of demigods couldn't pass through the golden white barrier, but as time passed, Zhao Feng found that the power of the screen was gradually fading. He believed that both Lord dynasties had already sensed this as well, which was why they were just sitting there and waiting. As long as the golden white divine power completely disappeared, they would be able to enter. This should be the most important place. I wonder what's behind the golden white screen? Zhao Feng was unable to calm down. The fortune within the God Corpse was the biggest treasure that had ever appeared in the continent zone, or else the little thieving cat wouldn't have been able to obtain a true divine weapon. However, most of the people from the continent zone didn't have the little thieving cat's skills, so they weren't able to obtain any of the high-end treasures that could make even demigods go insane. Zhao Feng himself only managed to obtain 3 of the fruits, and only with the little thieving cat's help. Wang tilde. Zhao Feng instinctively activated the power of his left eye, and a layer of faint gold light spread across his golden eye. Let's give it a try. Zhao Feng's sight managed to see through the golden white barrier, but it cost a lot of his eye intent. Who? Zhao Feng's vision suddenly became pitch black. It was as if day had suddenly become night. This big difference caused his heart to jump. This is what's behind the screen? Zhao Feng's heart tightened. The dimension was pitch black, but there was one thing that instantly attracted Zhao Feng's gaze. It was a golden white path in the world of darkness, and it led to a giant ball of light. The ball of light was slowly spinning and giving off a glow of light that made one's eyes instantly lock onto it. The true fortune should be within the ball of light, but there seems to be only one path there. Zhao Feng's eyebrows locked together. The golden white path was very narrow and could only accommodate roughly 4 people at once, but all the experts of both Lord dynasties were gathered here. A path that could only fit 4 people at once was definitely not enough. This would force the 2 Lord dynasties to attack each other. If that was the case, Sacred Lords would be in the worst spot since they were the weakest. It would be impossible for them to approach the ball of light. However, this was just Zhao Feng's guess. He wasn't sure what would happen in the future. There's still some time until the final treasury is unveiled. I'm going to use this chance to increase my strength. Zhao Feng told Nangong Sheng and Zhao Yufei. If everything happened as Zhao Feng thought and both Lord dynasties started to fight over the path, Zhao Feng would just leave and search for other fortune in the God Corpse. Right at this moment, Zhao Feng felt many divine senses scanning around. They had either complicated, surprised, or wary expressions. Sacred King Samsara. It's one of the descendants of the 8 great god eyes. Zhao Feng couldn't help but look toward the entrance. the inheritor of the Eyes of Samsara. Zhao Feng was very surprised. He didn't expect the owner of the Eyes of Samsara to also come here. Zhao Feng didn't see Lu Kuan-Yin's figure, but thinking about it, with Lu Kuan-Yin's current cultivation, she would be in danger even if she had her master protecting her. Sacred King Samsara stood in the pathway alone, but all the groups moving around revealed wary expressions. No one doubted his true strength. Zhao Feng could also feel enraged auras from both Lord dynasties, and Zhao Feng quickly understood after thinking about it. The Eyes of Samsara could force the dead to fall into the samsara of death and never gain new life. Those that Sacred King Samsara created samsara immortal bodies for were not simple people. They would definitely be the peak experts of both Lord dynasties, which meant that Sacred King Samsara had offended many forces. However, at the same time, the ability of Sacred King Samsara's samsara of life had also helped many superpowers and experts. Adding on the fact that Sacred King Samsara himself was extremely low-key and had unknown battle power, he was still alive even after offending so many forces. Sacred King Samsara slowly entered the broad dimension. Little friend Zhao Feng, we meet again. Sacred King Samsara slowly approached Zhao Feng's location, and the experts of both Lord dynasties were stunned once again. Who is that brat? Why is everything related to him? I didn't think that Zhao Feng would even know Sacred King Samsara. Looks like I still underestimated him. Sacred King Scarlet's son had a grim expression. Sacred King Samsara had souls of the Tai family as well. That brat isn't simple. Demigod Dark Ocean's expression was also grim. Humph, I shall destroy anything and everything in front of me. Battle intent radiated from the non-human demigod destruction as his eyes flashed with a golden light. The expressions of Zhao Yufei and Nan Gongsheng next to Zhao Feng also changed slightly. They felt an incredibly strong power from this normal-looking elder, and they would rather not interact with him. A rare sign of wariness appeared in Kun Yuan's eyes as well. Indeed. I didn't think that senior would come to such a crowded place. Zhao Feng faintly smiled and withdrew the barrier, allowing Sacred King Samsara in. I don't like crowded places, but I like places where there are many experts. Sacred King Samsara had a peaceful smile as his eyes scanned around. The expressions of the sacred lords and sacred kings from both lord dynasties changed dramatically as they started to become wary. Little friend Zhao Feng's rate of progress is indeed very quick. It's only been a couple years, but you've improved dramatically. Sacred King Samsara sat down, as if he was going to stay here. Chapter 1099, Everyone Entering. Little friend Zhao Feng's rate of progress is indeed very quick. It's only been a couple years, but you've improved dramatically. Sacred King Samsara sat down, as if he was going to stay here. However, from Zhao Feng's point of view, Sacred King Samsara was only casually sitting here. With Sacred King Samsara's strength, he didn't need to team up with Zhao Feng. Senior is able to come here alone. Such strength makes one admire you. Zhao Feng started to make small talk with Sacred King Samsara. Sacred King Samsara had helped Zhao Feng many times and, logically speaking, Zhao Feng should be very friendly with such an expert, but for some reason, Zhao Feng felt that his inner heart didn't like Sacred King Samsara. Could it be because of the Emperor of Death? Zhao Feng started to think. Zhao Feng then spoke a bit more with Sacred King Samsara before starting to cultivate. Zhao Feng used the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and started to focus on several subjects at once. The first thing he focused on was cultivating the 5 elemental wind lightning technique. His earth of wind lightning had reached the late stages, and he needed some more effort to consolidate it so that his progress later would be smoother. The second focus was to absorb the resources that he had obtained in the God Corpse and cultivate the Golden Kun sacred lightning body. Zhao Feng had cultivated it to the early stages of the 6th level, and it could reach the late stages at any moment. In order to face what was coming next, Zhao Feng would definitely raise his sacred lightning body to the late stages of the 6th level. Zhao Feng had the resources needed for both skills. He had obtained them through the ancient dream realm and the God Corpse. Zhao Feng could also duplicate what he needed with his left eye, but he didn't dare to expend too much energy since he needed to make sure he was at his peak state. Zhao Feng then put his focus into the dimension of his left eye. The third focus was absorbing the power of the God Tribulation lightning from the demigod head. The more God Tribulation lightning symbols he had in his lightning soul body, the harder it was to obtain more, so Zhao Feng started off from a different perspective. He started to strengthen each individual God Tribulation lightning symbol in his lightning soul body so that each symbol could contain more God Tribulation lightning and unleash more power. The strengthening of his God Tribulation lightning obviously meant that the power of his Tribulation lightning eye flame would become stronger. Zhao Feng's fourth focus was comprehending the battle with demigod ferocity. The scenery in the dimension of his left eye changed once more and turned into the setting of the fight, as if Zhao Feng had traveled back to the past. Zhao Feng started to replay the fight in the dimension of his left eye. The more he understood, the more he realized how much there was still to learn. Of course, Zhao Feng also had other thoughts, doing other things such as comprehending eye bloodline techniques, analyzing the third level of the soul-splitting technique, keeping an eye on the outside world, and more. Almost all the experts in the crystal dimension were in a half-cultivation state, trying to increase their strength at this critical moment in order to obtain more of whatever was to come. The golden white divine light at the end of the crystal dimension was still dimming. The power in the entire God Corpse is weakening. Even the divine power in this screen is fading away. Where is all this power going to? Maybe the inheritance that operates the head needs this energy. The divine power in the screen has become even weaker. If this continues, we'll be able to enter in a few more days. The experts that were in a half-cultivation state kept an eye on the situation of the outside world. Part of Zhao Feng's intent left the dimension of his left eye 2 days later. 3 fruits covered in crystal appeared before Zhao Feng in the misty spatial world. A small hole had been dug out by the little thieving. These 3 fruits surrounded Zhao Feng and released a desolate force through the holes. The intents of earth, lightning, and metal. Although Zhao Feng hadn't reached the level with the metal of wind lightning yet, that didn't mean he couldn't comprehend the element of metal. If Zhao Feng gained a certain amount of understanding in the element of metal beforehand, he would be able to cultivate the metal of wind lightning a lot more easily in the future. The 3 intents were like a mountain that suppressed Zhao Feng's soul and started to erode it. Zhao Feng's consciousness seemed to enter a desolate world made up of the elements of earth, lightning, and metal. The earth was dark yellow. Countless golden lights filled the air, and lightning boomed in the sky. In order to increase the rate of his comprehension, Zhao Feng used his God's spiritual eye. His mind instantly became very clear, his reaction and thinking speed became a lot faster, and his rate of understanding these 3 intents kept on increasing. However, as more and more power started to erode Zhao Feng's soul, he was unable to maintain his consciousness even if he had the God's spiritual eye. This is my limit. Zhao Feng suddenly opened his eyes, moved the 3 fruits to the side, and sealed them up. My soul intent easily surpasses late-stage sacred lords. If I use these fruits and enter comprehension for a couple more days, my soul intent will reach the level of a sacred king. Zhao Feng revealed a joyful expression. His soul intent had become a lot stronger, not just because of the fortune that he obtained, but also because of his natural talent in the soul. The divine power in the screen has weakened by more than 60%. Zhao Feng calculated as he inspected the golden white divine power in the distance. He then looked toward some other people. Nan Gongsheng had obtained a black fruit, and now his soul intent was catching up to his cultivation. The aura radiating from him was even more evil and wicked than before. On the other side, Zhao Yufei could directly absorb the heaven-earth yuan qi and aura of divine power just by sitting there. The aura of the mystic light sacred power radiating from her body was also becoming stronger. The speed at which the divine power is flowing away from the golden white screen is becoming faster. Kun Yuan suddenly said. Zhao Feng looked at Kun Yuan. Kun Yuan probably stole something important from demigod ferocity, or else he wouldn't have chased after Kun Yuan for such a long time. At this moment, Zhao Feng found that Kun Yuan's physical body contained a unique and powerful lightning. This was the first time that Zhao Feng felt this feeling. His gaze then turned toward the golden white screen. It's indeed become faster. Zhao Feng's tone was certain and excited. More and more experts couldn't help but stop cultivating. We'll soon be able to see what's happening. There's definitely a peerless treasure in there. It could even be a divine weapon that appears only in legends. There might be secret techniques that allows one to become a god. Almost all of the experts had stopped cultivating and stared at the golden white screen. The demigods could sense clearly how much divine power still remained in the screen. At a certain moment, the screen became extremely dim and seemed to become a ripple of water. Hu Tilda. Demigod Dragon Emperor led the other experts of the Grand Imperial Hall and flew out from their cave. On the other side, Demigod Dark Dragon from the Dark Capital cult flew out and stared at Demigod Dragon Emperor with a wicked smile. All the demigods of both Lord dynasties started to take action and released a terrifying pressure that shook heaven and earth. The sacred lords and sacred kings behind them stood still and didn't dare to move. "Little friend Zhao Feng, be careful," Sacred King Samsara said with a smile before leaving. "Same to senior," Zhao Feng replied. After all the demigods entered the dim ripple, the remaining sacred lords and sacred kings started to move as well. Zhao Feng and company weren't very close to the front, but they weren't at the back either. "Everyone, be careful," Zhao Feng warned right before they entered the dark screen. Wang tilde. The scenery in front of them started to twist before returning to normal. "This is?" Zhao Feng's expression changed dramatically as he looked at what was in front of him. At this moment, there was a path constructed from divine power in front of Zhao Feng, and there were many of these paths in the black dimension around him. At a certain moment, Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss figure appeared not very far away from Zhao Feng. A path made of light formed beneath his feet, and it reached all the way to the ball of light at the center. Zhao Feng. Flames of anger burned from Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss when he saw Zhao Feng, but Zhao Feng was stunned and completely ignored Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss. "How is this possible? Everyone has their own path?" Zhao Feng was still in shock. He had seen this world before they entered, and there was only one path of light back then. This meant that, before the experts of the two Lord dynasties entered, someone else had been here already. There was no one on the paths of light right now, so Zhao Feng didn't know whether the person that arrived earlier had already entered the ball of light or if they were already dead. How is that possible? The golden white screen was formed from extremely strong divine power. Even normal true gods wouldn't have been able to enter by force. Zhao Feng started to guess and was unable to calm down. Let's put that aside for now. Zhao Feng focused on something else. Since everyone had their own path, Zhao Feng didn't need to worry about his enemies stopping him or trying to kill him or what would happen to Nan Gongsheng and Zhao Yufei. Why is there no one on these divine power paths? Zhao Yufei inspected the path of light beneath her with surprise. Almost all of the experts that were outside had now entered the dark screen. A male covered in black scales suddenly appeared in the pathway and flew over. "Are you sure there's no problem inside?" the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon asked. After all, he had seen all the experts of both Lord dynasties enter, so he was slightly worried. "There's no problem at all," a female in white said from inside the origin dimension of destruction within the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon's body. There were many colorful screens that showed different images in front of her. "Okay." Excitement and cruelty flashed through the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon's eyes as it charged into the dim screen. The next instant, the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon appeared in the world of darkness where the experts of both Lord dynasties had gathered. A path of light also appeared beneath its feet. Black Destruction Serpent Dragon. The expression of a non-human sacred lord next to the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon changed dramatically. "Humph, you came in as well?" A non-human demigod in the distance harumphed coldly. "I didn't think that the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon was hiding somewhere nearby." Demigod Withered Breath of Sky Suspension Palace had an ugly expression. At this moment, the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon was just a sacred king, but it was able to hide from the demigods of both Lord dynasties. There was definitely something suspicious there. Chapter 1100, Many Dangers. The appearance of the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon surprised all the experts and forces of both Lord dynasties, but no one dared to do anything since everyone was still inspecting this new environment. The surroundings were pitch black, and there was only a path of light beneath their feet. At the center of this world of darkness was a spinning ball of brilliant light. It was so bright that no one was able to see the situation inside it. The true fortune should be within the ball of light at the very center. There's definitely something up with this path of light beneath our feet. All the experts of both Lord dynasties started to investigate. Shoo! Zhao Feng took out a king-ranked winged wolf and dropped it off the side of the path of light. The next instant, the winged wolf fell straight down and disappeared. What? The heart of Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss next to Zhao Feng shook when he saw Zhao Feng's actions. Many sacred lords and sacred kings next to Zhao Feng had also seen his experiment, and their hearts dropped. Not dead? Zhao Feng paused for a moment. He had set a dark heart seal on this king-ranked winged wolf, so he knew its situation. The winged wolf didn't die after falling into the black dimension, it was only teleported to another location within the God Corpse. This means that leaving the path of light equals failure, but it shouldn't be dangerous. You will just be sent out. Zhao Feng felt a bit more confident. When there was danger on the path of light, at least they could leave the path of light safely. At the same time, Zhao Feng obtained more intel through the senses of the winged wolf. The area outside the path of light was basically a forbidden area. Even if a demigod left the path of light, they would fall. Although the winged wolf could fly, it couldn't do anything outside the path of light apart from falling down. Just as Zhao Feng was preparing to investigate further, some experts started to move on the path of light. Weird lights started to blink in the black sky above them. Boom, boom, boom. Countless balls of gold and white light of different sizes sped downward and filled the dimension. The aura of an invisible divine power crushed downward and shook the hearts of the experts on the paths of light. That's divine power. Zhao Feng's heart shook. If one was hit by a golden white ball of light, even a demigod would turn into ashes. Go. Zhao Feng wasn't willing to be left behind by the others, so he instantly stepped forward. Zhao Feng instantly felt the mystic light sacred power within his sacred power whirlpool flow away from his legs. The mystic light sacred power in my body is fading away. Zhao Feng was stunned. He looked at the other experts on the paths of light and could tell that their situation was the same from their expressions. From the looks of it, the test in this dimension is more difficult than I imagined. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed. The experts that had entered this dimension for the test wouldn't have to deal with any threat from other experts, and they could leave the path of light at any time. The danger involved could be said to be extremely low. However, if one wanted to pass the test, they would have to completely concentrate on this test and give it their all. Two sources of danger had already appeared, and they only just started. Balls of divine power fell from the sky, and if one was hit by one, it meant complete death. Meanwhile, the path of light beneath them kept on sucking away any sacred power and divine power within their bodies. Go. A pair of scarlet wings of lightning spread behind Zhao Feng's back as he flew across the path of light. Under this situation, the best method was to reach the center as quickly as possible. However, Zhao Feng only flew out several meters before feeling a heavy force slowly descend. There's more resistance? Even Zhao Feng became slightly angry. There were far too many tests on this path of light. Luckily, Zhao Feng cultivated the Golden Kun sacred lightning body, so his physical defense was very strong. His 5-elemental wind lightning technique had also reached the 9th level, which was the earth of wind lightning, so he had a certain amount of understanding in regard to gravity. Wang tilde. Zhao Feng circulated his earth of wind lightning sacred power and created a domain of opposing force in order to fight back against the gravity on the path of light. Whoosh. Zhao Feng flew forward at the same speed, but he suddenly stopped again. The next instant, a ball of divine power fell from in front, passing straight through the path of light and hurling downward. A non-human sacred lord was flying on a path of light directly below Zhao Feng. It was too late when this non-human sacred lord sensed the disturbance. Boom. The ball of divine power destroyed everything in this sacred lord's area. What terrifying power! Zhao Feng's heart turned cold. A late-stage sacred lord couldn't even fight back at all against the ball of divine power and was completely destroyed. At the same time, Zhao Feng saw an early-stage sacred lord jump off from his path of light before he was hit by a ball of divine power. He quickly fell and was teleported away. Faster. Zhao Feng increased his speed as he summoned his mystic light sacred power. Since his god's spiritual eye could see everything, all the balls of divine power were within his control. As Zhao Feng kept flying, the gravity around him became stronger. To make sure the gravity didn't have any effect on him, Zhao Feng circulated his gravity domain at full power as well. This allowed Zhao Feng to gain deeper understanding of the power of gravity, so his gravity domain continuously became stronger as well. How can that brat be so fast? Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss was stunned. At this instant, Zhao Feng was speeding through his path of light. He would only occasionally stop for a moment to evade the balls of divine power falling from the sky. He had thrown Sacred Lord Demonic Abyss off a long time ago now. How is that possible? Many of the experts on the paths of light around Zhao Feng were also shocked. Almost all of the experts on a path of light could sense that, the faster one flew, the more difficult the test became, so many experts were proceeding carefully in order to make sure they were safe. Zhao Feng slowed down a little bit and inspected the others around him after hearing what some experts said. There were 2 demigod experts within a certain range of Zhao Feng. They were demigod withered breath from Sky Suspension Palace and demigod ferocity of the non-humans respectively. The speed of these 2 demigods was just a little bit faster than Zhao Feng. Could it be that the test everyone faces is related to their cultivation? Zhao Feng understood. This meant that the gravity the demigods had to face might be several dozen times stronger than what Zhao Feng had faced. This means that I should have a bigger advantage here. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. The path of light basically chose the strongest expert amongst the respective cultivation level. Zhao Feng was only at the early stages of the mystic light realm, but he was unrivaled even against those at the late stages of the mystic light realm. He could even fight against sacred kings. This was why Zhao Feng could fly at such a fast speed across the path of light. It's gone? Zhao Feng felt the gravity over him disappear very soon. A surge of powerful intent turned into a storm of ice as it appeared on the path ahead of Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng activated his ice water bloodline and circulated the water of wind lightning as he charged into the storm of ice. Boom. Gusts of extreme cold started to erode Zhao Feng's body and freeze his sacred power, but they only managed to decrease his speed by a tiny amount. The path of light below Zhao Feng's feet also kept on sucking his mystic light sacred power away. The faster Zhao Feng traveled, the stronger this suction force. While being hampered by these 2 powers, Zhao Feng also still needed to be wary of the balls of divine power falling from the sky. Zhao Feng soon exceeded the other experts by a very long distance. Some other experts also stood out among their respective paths of light, but all of them were either sacred kings or demigods. Everyone was slowly approaching the mysterious ball of light at the very center. Not far away, on Zhao Feng's right, demigod ferocity suddenly looked at Zhao Feng as he passed through the storm of ice. Zhao Feng. Killing intent covered demigod ferocity's face. While he was very close to Zhao Feng, he couldn't do anything. Demigod withered breath from Sky Suspension Palace only paid a little bit of attention to Zhao Feng before focusing on his path of light once more. This will be bad if it continues. Zhao Feng's expression was slightly ugly. The original distance between demigod ferocity and himself was quite large, but as they approached the ball of light, the distance between each path of light was becoming closer. Zhao Feng analyzed that demigod ferocity would be standing right next to Zhao Feng the moment they arrived at the end. The storm of ice disappeared after a while, and a white mist filled the air. An illusion? Zhao Feng sensed what this test was when he got close to the white mist, but such a weak illusion had no effect on Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng quickly sped through the white mist. As his speed increased, the strength of the illusion did as well, but Zhao Feng remained completely unaffected as he sped through the white mist. Zhao Feng soon caught up to demigod ferocity. Damn it, this brat. Demigod ferocity had an ugly expression. He was a demigod, but now an early-stage sacred lord caught up to him? However, soul intent and illusions were demigod ferocity's weakness. If I arrive at the finish line first, demigod ferocity will be unable to do anything to me. Zhao Feng suddenly thought of something. If he entered the ball of light and found Kun Yuan or the demigod of the Tai family, he wouldn't need to be scared of demigod ferocity. Besides, those that entered the ball of light first had the advantage anyway. Other sacred lords and sacred kings wouldn't even dare to think about reaching the end before demigods, but Zhao Feng had the ability to do so. Him catching up to demigod ferocity was the best proof. Zhao Feng had to reach the end before demigod ferocity or else demigod ferocity would kill him. Whoosh! Zhao Feng started to surpass demigod ferocity in the illusion segment. As he progressed forward, the distance between each path of light became closer, and Zhao Feng could see more experts from both lord dynasties. Zhao Feng. The deadly eyes of the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon locked onto Zhao Feng. He remembered what Zhao Feng had done in the Divine Illusion dimension. Even if he didn't have a deal with Beilin, the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon wouldn't let go of Zhao Feng. Now that the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon knew that Zhao Feng had the Ninth God's Eye, he wouldn't let go of Zhao Feng even if he forgot about the revenge. Black Destruction Serpent Dragon. Zhao Feng's expression changed as he felt the strong surge of killing intent from the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon. The Black Destruction Serpent Dragon was also an unparalleled existence among sacred kings. I had no weaknesses, and so its speed was very high as well. Since both lord dynasties had a feud with the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon, The Black Destruction Serpent Dragon also had to enter the Ball of Light as quickly as possible for its own safety.